Hi, I'm Steve from Steve's True History and Knowledge channel. Happy Sunday. Um, Welcome to my presentation on an analysis of Protocol number 1 of the Zionist Men of Wisdom, Who Really Rules the World. And before we get started, let me just say that I'm not against the Zionists. Zionists are a part of the Western civilization, and I live in the United States, so I'm a part of the Western civilization, and all my ancestors going back for thousands of years are a part of the Western civilization. And this ideology that comes from the Zionist is a big part of our history and our culture and our civilization, and so therefore I can never be against it. Currently, right now, there's a lot of hate that's going around against the United States, America, Western civilization, and I'm not going to be a part of that. I'll actually refute it and go against it. So I'm actually fascinated with history and what I've studied, and it has a lot to do with what they would call Zionism. And you'll find out that Zionists are really just Christians and Jews together. So, and we'll go over a little bit of that today. And it's kind of a wordy presentation, a lot of words, about 25 slides. Hopefully it doesn't take very long, but should be interesting. I tried to add in, it's really a summary, but I've tried to pull out the most important parts, but I've also added my insight into it and tried to actually compare and contrast it and show how it relates to Egypt as well. And so with that being said, let's get started. Who are the Zionist Men of Wisdom? The Zionist beliefs are a continuation of the Sun and Serpent tribes, each with their own ideologies that existed before the first states appeared. Prior to Egypt, both tribes ruled separately and were very powerful in Africa. They began to expand outward from their centers and to create empires. The ideologies were joined together in Egypt and are found in the gods of Ra, Horus, and Set. They formed the state government of Egypt with Horus and then Ra as the state deity. Ra was the king of all of earth and the heavens. The original location of Zion is Zoan, or Tanis, in the northeast delta of Egypt, not Jerusalem. Jerusalem comes later. This was an important city named in the myths, in the Egyptian myths. From the very first myth, Horus drives the followers of Set and the rebellion against Ra all the way to the northeast corner to Zoan. The ideologies are of both light and darkness, good and evil, or life and death, most importantly, divided but then united. They became the Christians and the Jews and Western civilization as a whole, the religions of Western civilization. They used this ideology as a plot to govern the people ever since the beginning of our history. It's embedded in the governments around the world. The protocols of the Men of Wisdom. The Zionist Men of Wisdom emphasize the importance and the ability to be able to critically think about world politics to bring the current political situation to light. They are the first ones to expose the protocols themselves by speaking of them. Then others exposed it afterwards. They state that they are a world government that rules over the rest of the governments of the world. The time that the protocols were released was about the times between 1895 and 1905, or about 120 years ago, or 4 to 5 generations ago. The ultimate goal is for the good, and who's God. They hold a theory about how the world should be governed, and the ultimate goal is for the whole world to be good, or that they do what they do for the greater good. The goal of the Zionists or Christians and Jews is for a Messiah, or for God to return to rule as the one and only King and God ruling over all of earth. This God is no other than a son of the sun god Ra, or Atum, who is Adam of the Bible, the first father and God king of earth in the Bible. The famous saying is, never was life as good as it was during the time when Ra ruled. You should decipher this as to mean of the First Republic, the time of the First Republic. They want to return to this time, and I don't blame them. We can see all what's going on. The world's changed just in I'm 46 years old, and in especially the last 5-6 years, I've seen it change dramatically. Downhill. The worldwide circulation of the one great book of the Bible, one given to everyone, is our evidence of who rules the world, and they made it a point to tell us by providing us with it. Okay, its origins. The first and most crucial documentation of this is the myths of our stories of Ra, Horus, and Set, the gods of Egypt. The next is the Ennead or Senate of Anu, the city of the sun, consisting of the family of the 9 gods with Ra at its head. The blueprint for the rest of the governments. A supreme court. A noble aristocracy of heroes or mighty men joined together and seen as gods. Themselves or their ancestors created the government policy of divide and conquer and mastered it, and now they call themselves the masters of the universe. They divide the population, install their government, create a republic where everything is good, then introduce chaos and evil into it, a democracy, and destroy it, loot it, and do it over and over again. Divide and conquer. This division is between 2 classes, the bottom or base of people, who are the poor majority, and the top or noble people or aristocrats, which they create by making them wealthy and appointing them to rule over the base. Of course, they do not want to deal directly with the poor, so they give orders from the top. The use of the word base is interesting here because it alludes to Freemasonry and the pyramid. We, of course, in the U.S., as a part of Western civilization, have the pyramid with the Eye of Ra on the back of our dollar bill. Protocol number 1 of the protocols of Zion, and what do they want? I think I forgot to change this title here, but this should probably be called the Aristocracy or something like that. Excuse me. Those at the top, the nobles or aristocracy, are not who we think they are. They are a small group of the best and most superior and privileged governmental individuals. The people or the base are the foundation or the support of this group. Equate this to the goddess Net, Hathor, or the god Shu, who hold up the heavens, or Ra, after he retires. They are the council of the elders. The main difference between these 2 classes is the way that they think. And the Zionists would say that the base does not think. The base and the nobles, it's all about liberty. The men of wisdom say that the two classes have different natural instincts like animals in nature. That the nobles are unable to reason with the base to achieve the goal of the greater good, and therefore they must use violence and intimidation to persuade them to their own need of an absolute ruler, or bringing Ra or a son of Ra to rule over the world. They want to make the base understand that liberty is not what they think it is. Liberty is the main driving force from both sides, and the sticking point in the inability of both classes to come to an agreement and come together, which is even now more important than ever for all of us to come together. Everyone wants power. Their belief is that every person seeks power for themselves, and that all people would like to become a dictator if they could, including themselves, because they said every man would like to become a dictator if he could. Therefore, they must feel that they need to control any and all potential dictators who come to power on earth. So to avoid this, it is best for them to install their own dictator, one of them as the head, and the one and only ruler of earth. They feel that it is rare to ever find a person who will sacrifice their own wants and needs for the greater good of all. This is in either class, both the poor or nobles. Ask yourself, would the poorest man want to become a dictator if he could? And I would say that that's probably a yes. A ruler is needed to direct the people. They believe in the laws of nature, and that they supersede any man-made laws. That in the beginning men had no direction and blindly walked upon earth without a purpose. That they had to submit to both brute, that the people had to submit to both brute or blind force to survive, which was later changed into man-made laws that are really the same thing as the brute and blind force, but in disguise. That the people's blindness comes from freedom or liberty. Otherwise, the people were under the control of whoever was the strongest or most violent, and because of fear, had to submit to it or die. The power of fear, right lies in might and political freedom. These are all three important points. They use the fear of the people as a tool to gain them more followers. One of their fundamental principles is that right lies in might, meaning what is right or righteousness, which is morals and the belief in a God who does the right thing all of the time, is not how they govern. Instead, they use might, which is ruled through power, authority, money, and resources. The mighty men on earth. Another is that political freedom doesn't truly exist, that it is merely an idea or an ideology created through government that gives the people civil liberties and human rights. Meaning, without government, freedom is not a political issue. It wouldn't be brought up without government, and that government gives us these rights and can take them away. They use the idea of political freedom for their own party's advantage, capitalizing on it through party politics, and it's used to crush the other parties who are in power. Okay, liberalism. I apologize for the small wording here. It might be kind of hard to see. I'll try to speak as clear as I can. I'm not the most articulate person. I tried to change the font, but it wasn't working for some reason. Okay, liberalism. They work to, we're talking about the Zionists here, I'd rather call them the men of wisdom. I think we should get rid of the Zionist word, but it identifies them. I think they want to use it as an identifying term of the people. I would prefer to just call them the men of wisdom and give them their respect. They work to and hope that the parties will use liberalism and contradict it before the people, such as saying or doing something that takes a part of freedom away from the people, causing dissent, which will result in the ruler backtracking and yielding his power for the sake of freedom, and this is when the wise men step in. Liberalism began with the men of wisdom giving it to the rulers of the world as a tool of politics. With its use, their theory becomes a reality and victory is theirs. Liberalism causes a loss of direction from the leader, giving the people total freedom with nobody telling them what they should be doing, which will result in anarchy. I think we've had an example of this over the last 5 years. When the men of wisdom can seize power of the state, then the men of wisdom can seize power of the state because they feel or know that the people need direction for their lives every day and that they will become the new leaders. This shows us how they work themselves into the governments and take them over, have control of it from the into the government and take it over or have control of it from the outside and can step in at any time. We can think of them as the watchers or the overseers of the governments. In the beginning, and I think that's important, important statement there. We can think of the Zionists as watchers or overseers of the governments that can and will step in and intervene if they feel necessary. In the beginning, the priesthood of Ra were the overseers or appointees of the king. Then they became the kings themselves. That's the 5th dynasty. If we begin to see Jewish leaders become the president, this would be an indication of them firmly stepping into place. If everything is running as they pleases, then there will be no need to. And I think we're very close on the cusp of that. Instead, they put Trump in there, which I think was a good idea and shows their Trump card that they use, right? No pun intended. Gold and the Zionist Men of Wisdom. Now, at the time of the protocols, and maybe even today, they say gold has replaced liberal rulers, and before this, faith used to rule. I don't know if that statement is true because I think we still have liberal rulers still today. We just witnessed that, even though Biden may not be a great example of that, when Democratic Party is in power, that's a liberal party. And they've proved that to us these last 5 years. We're not going to go into it. We should look at the beginning of gold with the Nubians and the Nubian hills, Horus and Set at Nupt or Ambos, and at Nakata and Heracompolis. Gold mining was a big, huge thing in ancient Egypt. We should think of the golden hawk or Horus. There is early ideology related to gold that comes from these locations. When he says that before this faith, when the Zionist presenter says that before this faith, before this, the rule of gold, my apologies. Before gold replaced liberal rulers, faith used to rule. may be an indication that they don't believe that Zion goes back all the way back to Zoan of Egypt, and that the gold of Nubia because they seem to be referring to Christianity here, and thus stating that gold wasn't a factor at that time. I don't know why they would say that. That's interesting. That shows me that they don't know their history, and they're starting it at a certain point. Because gold was even relevant at the time of Jerusalem. Okay, states are weakened by liberalism. They believe that the idea of total freedom is not possible, that it is too complicated for them to construct, that based on the history, the base of people at the bottom do not think and reason, that people within themselves will choose themselves rather than the greater good, and that a self-government will become corrupted by the people, which will result in bitterness, fighting for power, leaving people to struggle for themselves, which all will cause anarchy and the state to be set on fire and reduced to ashes. They believe that liberalism causes internal disintegration of the state and civil wars, which allows outside powers to gain control over the state. Once a state reaches this point, it's too late. Capitalism and debt. The Zionists believe in capitalism, which equals despotism, which is an oppressive and authoritative power, which is controlled by them. So we don't see this as a one ruler ruling oppressively and authoritatively. We see this within the corporations, and when you go to work, you're ruled, right? And you can be fired for no reason. We're all at will. So if the laws change and we're no longer at will, then we know that we will no longer be under oppressive authoritative power. When states begin to fail, right, you can go and come to work whenever you want. You know, your paycheck is always guaranteed. That's the difference, right? You work when you feel like working. When states begin to fail, and that'll probably happen eventually in the future, when states begin to fail, they step in to offer relief through introducing capital. The state doesn't want to take it, but it's left with no choice or it will die. Therefore, they put states in perpetual debt, just like they do to the people. They recognize how, or do the people do it to themselves, right? But they allow it. They recognize how this could be perceived as being immoral, but argue that it is not, because it's fighting against the transgressors within the state who are against social order and prosperity. The people need one strong absolute ruler. They argue that the people need one strong absolute ruler who rules by logic and sound judgment without any contradictions allowed and no other options available. Meaning that's it. This is because the masses will be enticed by something that is more attractive to them. So that's why there can't be any other options available. That they are guided by their own internal wants, passions, customs, traditions, and sentimental values. That the people are a mob or the majority within a state who get themselves involved in what they do not understand, namely party politics between both sides who cannot come to an agreement, Republican and Democratic parties. The mob is ignorant to the political secrets, make the wrong and absurd decisions which introduce anarchy into the government. Morals don't matter in government, rights in might. And I totally believe that as a former person who worked in government. The Zionists believe that politics have nothing to do with morals. This contradicts the religion of Ra. So I would like to compare and contrast Zionists with Ra. So the Zionists are not on. The Zionists must part of the Zionists must not truly understand their history, and they need to learn it. And my channel would be a good channel for them to come to and watch all the videos and absorb all the information and learn their history and correct what they're saying and doing. But then there's the other half of the Zionists that seem like they do know what they're doing, which is the other part of the good and evil. Ra's the good, the other part is the evil. The evil seem to be knowing what they're doing. The good part doesn't seem that they either don't have any control or very little control, or they just know that this is the age of the evil time, so they're just kicking back, just waiting when the time is going to change. So I don't know, right? I don't know yet. I hope to find that out sooner or later. If I can sit there and talk to them and interview them, I would love to do that. Maybe I'll try to do that. Neither do the revered attributes of honesty and frankness. Right? Those are great attributes to have. They're saying they have being honest has no part of government, and if you go and work in government, you're going to learn that right away. That these are weak attributes of a political ruler, that if used, he will fail. On the contrary, they believe in being cunning, crafty, or trickery, and hypocrites, a false sense of virtue and religion to rule. They watch or allow the goy. This is the first time we're seeing the word goy being used. Watch my video on goy, definition of goy. Governments, okay. They watch or allow the goy governments to use these attributes, but will not use them themselves. For them, what is right is found in using might, and thus taking what is not theirs to show you that they are stronger than you and that they rule over and control you. There are many examples of this in society that we all experience when dealing with the government. You can probably think of many of them. Infiltrating, installing evil, and bringing a state down. Liberal rights cause a ruler to lose his dignity and will make the laws become insignificant. In contrast, they use might to destroy all existing orders and institutions and take over the laws and states. If you allow people to do whatever they want, which is pure freedom, you are giving up your power to rule. Then the men of wisdom understand this and use it to their advantage. They are working behind the scenes and are hidden and continue to increase their power. They purposely, so if you think that the Western civilization is declining, would you say that President Bush from 2004 is a part of Western civilization? You would, right? So he said, if you recall, he said, we will issue in a new world order, right? We, the West, will issue in a new world order. The men of wisdom understand this and use it to their advantage. I already said that, sorry. They purposely install temporary evil into states and society through many means and create chaos, out of which in the aftermath, according to them, comes good and an unshakable government which reinstates order, i.e. the birth of a new republic. So the United States is a republic. It's supposed to be a republic at its founding, just like all many other states and countries. But we have a famous saying here, is a republic if you can keep it, right? So they're trying to take it away from us, right? And they've been getting very close to doing that, but Trump came in and kind of pushed back and kind of trying to level things back out and keep a balance. So hopefully we're going to keep it, because if not, then we might go into an empire phase or a civil war. Either two are possible. Contrary to all the YouTube videos that you see saying that the United States is already an empire, however, we don't have an emperor who's actually ruling yet. Okay, let's see. Where was I? They believe that this end result justifies their actions and their evil. They plan and train to rule from birth. They plan and train to rule from birth. They say themselves they have planned this for many centuries, but in fact it's really millenniums. That it's based on what is necessary and useful, not what's good and moral. Contrary to the beliefs of the sun god Ra is good in morality, they're taking that away and they've replaced that with this new system. And but they want the old system back. They lost it, right? Rebellion, the children of Ra rebelled. Ra gave up and retired somewhere, and let his children rule, and his children are ruling from an evil perspective. They cannot risk messing up all of their work for the past few centuries or millenniums. They believe that they are the best ones to rule the world, or the chosen ones by God, and that when they plan, they do consider the meanness of the mob and their unwillingness to stand up and fight for themselves, but that the mob does not appreciate and respect the conditions of their lives, of their own lives, and their own well-being. And that's probably true, right? Look at, we can't even take care of ourselves. Look at, everything is here. We wanted all the freedom here so you can do whatever you want. And then look what happened and look how it is, right? There's no self-control. So I'm agreeing with what they're saying here. They feel that we lack direction, reason, discrimination, and get caught up in party politics. That's true, right? We don't understand politics, but we want to get involved in it. And then we're causing problems, right? We're helping to contribute to the problems, and they probably hate it, right? They probably hate it, but we're the foundation. They can't get rid of us, or they have nothing. And that if one of us takes the lead, we will fail. That only a child trained from birth, from generations, skilled in politics like a king or god, could understand politics and how to rule a nation. So they're letting you know that they are trained from birth into these world politics. And they have the time, right? They're not working a 9-to-5 job. They're waking up and learning. Their schooling and their job is to learn world politics. The uncontrollable mob's inability to think and be good, and the need for a ruler. That is because the mob is so big. I've lost my picture here. That is because the mob is so big, all with different ideas and their own minds, who cannot come to an agreement and who will oppose a leader, will become greedy for power and honor, and will not be able to unite the people or be able to rule themselves. Therefore, it requires an autocrat who is sure to include all parts of the government in his plans. There can only be one leader. Civilization cannot exist without absolute despotism. Right? So they already they've already tried this in North Korea and China, right? In the communist locations, they have the one ruler, and so they only have one party, and the parties are not fighting with each other. So that's what they're saying here, right? So they have those experiments that they've already got going on in the world, so they know how they work, and then they can compare and contrast it to our system, and then what it does is it just increases their knowledge, and they learn how to rule better and better as time goes on. Liberty results in barbarism and alcoholism, which makes the people act like beasts. They do not like their own people to drink alcohol. And I'll say from my personal is I've been sober from alcohol for about 18 years now. So and I believe that when I get around drunk people, I can't stand it. I can't stand being around drunk people. You're just lack of intelligence and stupidity, and even when they're not drunk, they're just not the kind of people that I would want to associate with. I did all that when I was younger, and now I've learned from that, and now I'm smarter, and I wouldn't associate with those same kind of people. So they install in society the vices that the people will become addicted to, and drugs included, right? Drugs included. You think that they're not a part of the drug trade? They are. Such as education, money, and prostitution. The so-called society women, these people called the society women, or high society, high class women, who marry the wealthy men of the goys, are merely followers of these men with these vices. These men who love money, education, prostitution, drugs, alcohol, and luxury. Yachts, big huge yachts, hotels, houses, mansions. Have too much money, they don't even know what to do with it. But they're not walking around giving it to the poor people, right? Power, hypocrisy, and justice used to control. The Zionist motto is power and hypocrisy. They say that only power can conquer politics, which is concealed within the talents of statesmen. Power through violence being a hypocrite. Okay. Power through violence, being a hypocrite, instituting laws that they do not actually follow themselves, and being cunning to force the governments to lay down their crowns. So these are all characteristics or attributes of the Zionist. Power through violence, being hypocrites, being cunning to get the governments of the world to lay down their crowns. They are aware that this is evil. It's made necessary for the goal of good. So they will not hesitate to commit bribery, fraud, treason, and seize others' property. They prefer to do this without war because war is horrible. So they do it through other forms of terror to make the people submit to them. I don't I don't think that they've completely abolished the use of war. I don't think that's true. Um, uh, we know that's not true. Maybe they prefer not to, but then they're left with no choice. Um, and fraud, of course, is widespread in the government. Treason, all these things we see in our seizing people's property. We see this going on. It shouldn't be going on, but we see it going on. Um, they stand by being strict, and their minds cannot be changed, and they stand by justice, both of which are the greatest factors of their power. So we can think of strict laws and rules in the judicial system. Now, as a follower of the path to be like Ra, I'm supposed to have faith in the judicial system. And I want to, and I'm supposed to be obligated to, but I think that it's corrupted. Violence, hypocrisy, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Violence and hypocrisy make them prophets and make them victorious. They use their own doctrine that is calculated and potent, employed severely to enslave all governments under their super government. They introduced the concepts of liberty, equality, and fraternity and got many people to follow and adopt it. What it did was ruin prosperity and true individual freedom, which previously was protected from the mob. Therefore, prosperity and freedom were preserved and protected from the mob in the past. That the mob did not notice there was no equality in nature. There's not any inequality in nature. When you go to nature and there's no, between the female lion and the male lion, the female chimpanzee and the male chimpanzee, there's no equality there, right? Between the little small gorilla and a big silverback gorilla, there's no equality there. Both males, but there's not equality in strength and power there in nature. That the mob did not notice there was no equality in nature, and there cannot be liberty because nature herself has established inequality of mind, character, and ability, and has subjected them to her laws. So meaning people have different levels of intelligence, people have different attributes, good and evil, and different abilities. So there is no equality. The three concepts also destroyed the peace, quiet, and solidarity, which I believe they are thinking here of things that they enjoy themselves. So I believe that the men of wisdom value peace, quiet, and solidarity. So if they value peace, quiet, and solidarity, that means they want that for the whole earth. And undermined the foundations of the states. They undermine the foundations of the states. So the foundations of the states have these are originally built on these good religious qualities and beliefs originally from Ra, but they undermine those foundations. Destroying the Goy aristocracy and supplanting their own. They say even a fool who has been initiated by them into the understanding of politics is capable of ruling compared to an uninitiated genius who cannot. So the use of the word initiated and uninitiated means there has to be some kind of a society or government or fraternity or something that they're themselves are being initiated, which is most likely Freemasonry. The example of this is dynastic rule, where knowledge of politics is passed from father to son and the secrets are kept. So we know originally in Egypt, this is dynastic rule, right? Ra rules, Ra has children, his next son in line, the son of Ra, becomes the next ruler, and so on and so on, and it's continued. They learned they were the government, so they learned politics, and they kept the secrets of those politics and how to rule the people within their family, and they lost it, right? When Isis said, Ra, tell me your name, and Ra had to give it to her because of the pain, and he was scared of dying. I don't know why Ra was scared of dying, but we know that, okay, Ra's scared of dying. We know that he's a human on earth. Ra gave it up and gave his power away. So we need to get it back. The goal is to get it back. All of these things gave us the trump card and victory. Victory is an important word here. When you look at the orb with the cross on top, which is the rule of the Christian kings, particularly now only the north of Europe, they have the orb and the scepter. Originally, it was the scepter and the ankh were the keys of life. And so, but the Christians, being descendants of this Western civilization and these beginnings, kept the orb and the scepter. But now the ankh is just turned around, upside down. And I hope that doesn't have a negative meaning, but it could. I have some videos on that. I haven't seen a negative meaning for it, but there could be something that I don't know. And the orb and the scepter means that the Christian king is ruling all of the world. So that victory in the Roman times, the orb would have the goddess of victory on top of it, or the goddess of liberty, the goddess of victory, meaning they conquered the governments. So I don't know if I said this, but I'll say it again. All these things gave us the trump card and victory. It destroyed the aristocracy of the Goys, which was the only protection that the people had against us. It abolished the privilege. So if we look around the world, Goy, if you watch my video definition of Goy, Goys are anybody who's not Christian or a Jews. Originally, it may have just been anybody who's not Jews, but then eventually it became whoever's not a Christian, Jew, or a Roman citizen. So if you look around the world, there used to be kingdoms all over the world and emperors all over the world. China, Japan, wherever, Mongol, Thailand, Vietnam. They're no longer kings. Their families are no longer. Their families may be ruling behind the scenes, but they're no longer kings. The only kings that are still left are the Christian kings, who are the Anglo-Saxon kings of the Northern Europe, and they're all related. They ruined the natural and hereditary aristocracy and built their own aristocracy of an intelligent class based on wealth. Okay, slaves of money and puppet rulers. I think this is the last slide, or close to it. This aristocracy is dependent. Their aristocracy that they created is dependent. Oh wait, no, yeah, the aristocracy that they created, the noble class that the Zionists created, is dependent on the Zionists for their wealth and the science of the wise men. They used other people whom they met through connections to play or use the people to corrupt them with greed and their own selfish desires. These weaknesses killed their initiative and placed the will of these people at the disposal of the buyer. Examples being employment and money. Your labor is bought, and we agree to it. Liberty convinced the masses that government is the manager representing the owner of the country, who is the people, and that this manager, i.e. the president, can be discarded at any time. Right? We can vote him in or out, or we can impeach. Because these government representatives can be deposed of, they are controlled by the wise men, and thus the position that they hold is dependent upon by them. Dependent on the wise men. Alright, that's the end of it here, and the bibliography is all of this except for what I've added comes from Sergei Nilis's famous book, The Protocols and World Revolution. I had some other things I wanted to say, but I lost my train of thought on this. But thank you for watching. My name's Stephen Webb from San Diego, California. Take care. Have a good day. Have a good Labor Day tomorrow. See ya.